Welcome to a special episode of NeverendingPanel.com. I'm your host, Donnie Collin. Tonight we have a very special guest in author Harry Turtledove, credited with bringing alternate history into the mainstream, often called the master of alternate history, Hugo Award winner, two-time Sideways Award winner, and Prometheus Award winner. And Prometheus,
he's the guy who is going to kick our butts.
Well, yes, so we're up against him also for the Prometheus Award. We are greatly honored. And
as am I.
Thank you.
It is an honor to be nominated.
It is pretty amazing.
It's actually pretty darn cool.
All right. Tonight's panel is alternate history, and I know you've been asked this question a lot, and we'll dive right in. Is it really science fiction, or why is it science fiction?
I think it is. I've been having this argument with Stan Schmidt about it lately. It uses all of the techniques that other forms of science fiction do. You take in ordinary science fiction one thing in the present or in the near future and extrapolate how that change will ramify into the further future. If you're writing alternate history, you take one change in the past and see in the more distant past and see what its ramifications are in the nearer past. And you use all of the same techniques of research and extrapolation and sometimes of fiddling with the technology that you do with any other kind of science fiction. And I don't see why, if it doesn't quack like a duck and swim like a duck and taste like a duck when you roast it in orange sauce, it's not really a rose.
Well, just to throw some salt on the wound,
Wrenches into the wheel.
Gasoline on the fire.
Gasoline onto the fire.
Wouldn't it make more sense to call it a form of fantasy versus science fiction?
No, because fantasy deals with what, so far as we know, can't happen. Alternate history deals with what could have happened. And therefore, to me, falls into the same boat as the rest of SF, which deals with what might happen.
It's interesting that the debate keeps coming up. There's somehow this notion that if it's behind us, it's not sciencey enough, and therefore not science fiction, or sideways.
Congratulations, you're quoting Stan.
and I keep having to add, and we don't even write alternate history, but
Yet.
But we keep having to sort of answer that one also. And I always actually have to end up scratching my head and saying, well, because the fantastic or the fantastical happens, and you got to move from there.
Alternate history is not, or doesn't have to be fantastical. It can be as mundane as somebody finding something that in real history stayed lost and creating an enormous change in the world thereby.
There's that pesky Library of Alexandria. Who knew?
Right, now everything changes. Very interesting. There are so many of these sort of subgenres that have been breaking out within science fiction. There's, fantasy, urban fantasy, contemporary urban fantasy.
Fantasy's older than science fiction. Science fiction broke out in fantasy.
Right. Thank you. It's good to be schooled. So I guess people are trying to find a space, within that, or trying, desperately to define alt history within that. So I guess that's why this debate seems to keep rearing its ugly head. And you keep having to say, no, it's the same thing.
Yeah, probably. People who read this kind of stuff tend to be precise, detail-oriented people, and they want their categories to be exact.
Right.
Detailed and separate from one another, whether they really are or not.
Do you think it would be more accurate to give it the label speculative fiction?
I don't care what you call it.
As long as you buy my books.
Precisely. My children still need shoes.
Right. My kids go through shoes anyways. So you don't have any concerns or worries that by being labeled science fiction, and it's very funny, Eitan and I wrote a speculative fiction book that is science fiction, obviously, but I see people's eyes sometimes glass over if I don't say speculative fiction first. I can almost smell out the crowd or the person I'm talking to before I say the word science fiction as opposed to speculative fiction, because a lot of times they'll tune it out, and they won't care. If you say I'm a science fiction author, you start to lose them.
I grew up in the ghetto. That's where I came from. I live there. I know that. And if I try to go outside, they throw stones at me. What am I going to do?
Right. Okay, so no sense of thank you, Frank. 4 fingers. Good. All right. I guess sometimes I wish that it was more clear, for people, that if you say science fiction, it doesn't automatically. I don't understand. The truth is, why do people's eyes glass over?
The problem is science fiction covers a vast amount of the human imagination. Essentially, science fiction is, and fantasy to a certain degree, is what myth was in the past. It is the scientific world's ability to mythologize, and therefore it's going to be vast. You're not going to be able to pigeonhole it because the human mind needs to expand and have all of these niches, and we're trying to put one label on it when you can't put a label on the human imagination.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think the other part of the large Migo factor is, well, there are two. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Achieve the eminence of fear, surprise, and the ruthless efficiency to the Pope. Cardinal Pickens, fetch the soft cushions. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Two. One is that science fiction in the 30s was mostly dreck, a technical term, and people tend to remember that. And the other thing is that science fiction in the movies and on TV, which is what most people who don't read, which means most people, think of as science fiction, has never outgrown the 30s. And it's mostly
Very
dreck.
simple, spaghetti-y.
Good, bad,
Right.
black and white.
Right. I don't think anybody labeled Children of Men science fiction, but it clearly is, a dystopic fable that is very much science fiction. What
And
if?
Blade Runner was labeled science fiction. That
Well,
might
you
be
have
the
flying
exception.
cars. It has to be labeled science fiction.
Androids.
They weren't androids. They were replicants.
Replicants.
Bow your head in shame.
And
Shame.
they took an Alan E. Nurse title for a full K-Dick book. I hope they paid him.
Oh, I didn't realize that they did.
Sure.
Well, I guess.
I mean, the book is Do Android
Do Android
Dream
Dream.
Sheet.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over big on the
No.
in the media market. That's a very good point. So essentially, since science fiction has remained within the larger media a sort of dumb,
Not sort of dumb. Dumb.
when you say science fiction author, they simply assume that
You're
that,
dumb.
that you're dumb. Oh, that's very interesting. I never thought of it that way. That's a good defense.
Which is rather ironic considering most of the people that read and write science fiction are
Ridiculously smart.
annoyingly
art.
so.
Yes.
Present
We're
company
socially
excluded.
challenged sometimes.
We're not twins.
No, we had one guy, it was very funny, and we wrote what was considered a hard SF novel, blah, 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 straight down the classic, and he was like, you realize that your big, huge planetoid series can't be where you say it is. And then he gave us like 15 reasons why it couldn't be there, and I realized afterwards in checking he's right. So
This stuff
the
happens.
fix will be in the second reprint.
Any writer is going to get nailed every now and again. It happens. It comes with the territory.
Okay, so I think essentially alternate history we're saying is science fiction. The Grandmaster himself has said so, so who's going to argue with you, except your wife?
I won't.
Presumably. Eitan won't. And I like the reasons. Actually surprised. I hadn't thought of going there, and I'm glad that we did.
Okay.
So this wraps up this episode of NeverendingPanel.com.
My name is Eitan Collin. My rude and inconsiderate brother forgot to introduce me, but allow me to say that if you disagree, if you think that alternate history is not science fiction, please comment below and let us know what we got wrong, or if you agree with Harry and essentially the rest of us on this point, say why. Thank you for calling into NeverendingPanel.com. Harry, thank you.